The river had already begun to lose its familiar edges, spreading outward in slow, restless movements that swallowed grass and bent the reeds low. In the middle of that restless motion, something small remained still. It was not the stillness of driftwood or stone, but a compact shape pressed against the reed bed, soaked through, fur-clumped and darkened by water. The cub's body trembled in short, uneven pulses, each one fighting the cold current that rushed past without pause. Around it, the river carried branches, leaves and foam, the sound never settling into silence, only rising and falling like breath that could not rest. From the forest's edge, a ranger moved along the flooded bank with careful steps, scanning the water for debris that could become danger downstream. Years of patrol had trained his eyes to notice movement, but also the absence of it. Living rivers rarely held anything that did not struggle. When his gaze caught the small shape pinned against the reeds, the difference registered before thought followed. He slowed, boots sinking slightly into softened earth, listening not for calls but for the rhythm of water around something that resisted it. The cub did not cry out. Its mouth opened once, releasing only a thin, breathless sound that vanished beneath the river's noise. Its eyes were open, wide and glassy, tracking nothing in particular, fixed more on the moving water than on any future path. One foreleg twitched, then stilled again, muscles exhausted from holding against the pull. The stripes along its flank were barely visible under mud and soaked fur, but their pattern marked it unmistakably as a tiger cub, far too young to have crossed this stretch alone. The ranger crouched low, keeping distance, letting the scene settle before him. Flood seasons often scattered the forest's young, tearing apart paths learned only weeks earlier. Somewhere upstream, a mother would be moving along higher ground, her calls swallowed by wind and rain, her scent broken by water. The cub's head lifted weakly as the ranger shifted his weight, not in recognition but in reflex, responding to vibration more than presence. Its body pressed tighter into the reeds, claws scraping softly against wet stalks that bent but did not break. A low voice carried across the water, barely louder than the rain, meant less as reassurance than as rhythm. "It's okay," he murmured, not stepping closer yet. The sound was steady, even, offering no urgency that might startle a body already balanced between holding on and letting go. The cub's ears flattened briefly, then relaxed, its breathing slowing by degrees so small they were almost imagined. Water continued to rise, climbing the cub's side, lifting loose fur into ripples. The ranger watched the line where water met body, calculating time rather than distance. Each minute altered the balance. He shifted again, carefully placing one hand against the reeds to test their strength. The cub shuddered, then steadied, eyes blinking against droplets that clung to its lashes. Above them, the rain thinned, breaking into lighter strands. The river did not quiet, but its surface softened, carrying reflections of pale sky between the waves. Farther back, beyond the flooded grasses, the forest stood dark and waiting, its sounds muted by water and distance. The cub remained pressed against the reeds, small and breathing as the current moved past, carrying the day forward without pause. Somewhere beyond sight, birds resumed tentative calls, and the wind shifted through flattened grass, lifting the scent of wet earth, holding the moment open, suspended as light drifted across the water and did not fade. The movement away from the river was slow and deliberate, shaped by the ground as much as by intention. Water still covered most of the bank, but higher earth waited just beyond the reeds, firm enough to hold weight without sinking. The ranger adjusted his grip with care, keeping the cub's body level, supporting its chest and hindquarters so the pull of gravity did not steal what little strength remained. The cub did not resist. Its head rested against his arm, heavy with fatigue, whiskers dripping steadily as shallow breaths lifted and fell against damp fabric. Behind them, the river continued without notice, folding back into itself, already erasing the place where the cub had been pinned. Ahead, the forest edge hovered in a soft gray curtain of rain. It was there, from somewhere beyond sight, that a sound emerged, low, restrained, not a call meant to travel far, but one meant to be found. It cut through the rain without urgency, steady and controlled, carrying the weight of presence rather than panic. The ranger paused, instinctively still, allowing the sound to pass through the air and into the ground beneath his feet. The cub's body shifted in response before any sound left it. One paw flexed weakly, claws extending and retracting against empty air. Its head lifted a fraction, nose turning toward the forest, nostrils flaring as it drew in damp scent mixed with soil and leaf. The breath that followed was shallow, uneven, but it held. The cub did not cry out. Its response was contained, limited to movement, to the quiet work of staying connected without drawing attention. The ranger resumed his pace, angling slightly away from the sound, not toward it, understanding the distance required. Mothers did not approach when unfamiliar figures stood between them and their young. The cub's weight shifted again, lighter than expected, bones too prominent beneath soaked fur. He adjusted his hold once more, careful not to press where ribs moved too easily beneath his hands. "Easy," he said softly, the word barely shaped before the rain took it. They reached higher ground where grass lay flattened but dry enough to offer insulation from the cold. The ranger lowered the cub onto the earth with the same restraint he had carried it, easing away support only when its body settled into the grass. The cub lay on its side, chest fluttering, eyes half-lidded now, blinking slowly against drops that still fell from its face. Its tail twitched once, then lay still, curved loosely along its hind leg. The forest sound came again, closer this time, though still unseen. It did not repeat insistently. It held, then faded, replaced by the hush of rain on leaves and the distant movement of branches shifting under their own weight. The cub's ears angled toward the sound, then relaxed. Its breathing steadied by degrees too small to measure without watching. The trembling that had once traveled through its body eased, leaving behind a fragile stillness that was not emptiness, but rest. The ranger stepped back, increasing the space between himself and the cub, keeping his outline low and non-threatening. He remained present without closing the distance, allowing the forest to reclaim its role. The cub did not attempt to rise. It remained where it was placed, conserving energy, eyes drifting shut and open again, responding to scent and sound with quiet awareness. As the rain thinned further, light filtered through the canopy, pale and diffused. Grass lifted slowly, releasing water back into the soil. Somewhere deeper in the trees, the low sound moved again, no longer reaching the clearing. The cub lay breathing on the higher ground, small chest rising and falling as wind moved through the grass around it, carrying the damp scent of earth toward the forest, where unseen movement continued, patient and waiting, beneath a sky beginning to clear. The decision to lift the cub again was made without signal or discussion, shaped by timing rather than emotion. The ground beneath her was higher, but not enough. Water still threaded through the grass, quiet but persistent, and the air held the kind of cold that settled into small bodies faster than it left them. Hands moved into frames slowly, palms open, fingers spread to show shape before contact. Training guided every motion, learned through repetition and restraint, through understanding how easily urgency could become harm. When the hands touched her, they did so with even pressure, one supporting the chest, the other the hindquarters, lifting in a single smooth motion that did not jolt or pull. The cub's body responded by yielding. There was no stiffening, no recoil. Her weight settled fully into the hold, heavier than her size suggested, exhaustion filling the spaces where resistance might have been. Her head rolled gently to one side, resting against a sleeve already darkened by rain, whiskers flattened and dripping. Her eyes remained half open, unfocused, tracking light rather than form. The muscles along her neck twitched once, then relaxed. Breathing remained shallow but steady, each rise of her chest small and consistent. A faint sound escaped her throat, not a call, not a cry, just air moving where it needed to go. Her paws hung loosely, toes curled inward, claws sheathed without effort. The rain began to thin, its sound shifting from constant to scattered, droplets striking leaves with more space between them. The change was subtle, but the forest responded. The air lightened. The weight of sound lifted just enough to notice. The person holding the cub adjusted his stance, stepping carefully, placing each foot where the ground held firm. There was no rush in his movement. Speed had no place here. Stability mattered more than distance. A phrase slipped out softly, shaped by habit rather than intention. "It's all right," he said, not loud enough to travel, not meant to reassure the forest or the sky, only to anchor his own rhythm. The cub did not react outwardly, but her breathing shifted, the pause between breaths lengthening slightly, the rise of her chest becoming less uneven. Her body remained slack, trusting the moment without understanding it. As they moved, water slid from her fur in thin streams, leaving dark trails along the fabric beneath her. The scent of wet earth grew stronger with each step away from the river's edge. Grass brushed against her flank, bending under her weight, leaving behind a brief impression that filled slowly as water drained back into the soil. Her tail swayed once with the motion, then stilled again. The forest ahead remained watchful but restrained. No shapes moved into view. No sound followed them closely. Presence lingered without intrusion, held at a distance shaped by instinct and experience. The cub's ears flicked once, then settled, angled neither forward nor back, resting in a neutral line against her head. When they reached a place where the ground rose gently and remained dry beneath the surface, the movement slowed further. Knees bent carefully. The cub was lowered with the same control that had lifted her, her body guided until it met the earth, grass folding beneath her side. Hands remained for a moment longer, maintaining contact until her weight transferred fully and evenly. Only then did they withdraw, leaving warmth behind without claiming it. She lay still, eyes fluttering once before settling half-closed again. Her chest continued its quiet work. Rain fell now only in scattered drops, slipping from leaves and branches, tapping softly against the ground. Wind moved through the grass in low waves, carrying scent and sound away from the clearing. The cub remained where she was placed, breathing, resting, held by the moment as the rain eased and the forest exhaled, letting light begin to filter back through thinning clouds. The forest signaled her arrival before she was seen. Small birds cut their calls short, leaving gaps where sound had been moments before. Leaves shifted without wind, branches parting just enough to change the shape of the tree line. Even the ground seemed to still, holding moisture and scent without releasing it. At the edge where grass gave way to shadow, a form resolved slowly, not emerging all at once, but assembling itself from stripes, muscle, and restraint. The tigress stepped forward with measured precision. Her body remained low, weight balanced evenly across each limb, tail hanging heavy and quiet behind her. She did not rush. She did not pause. Each step closed distance without pressing it, her attention fixed entirely on the small shape lying ahead. Her ears stayed forward, not flattened, not relaxed, tuned to everything at once. Rain slid from her coat in narrow lines, darkening the soil beneath her paws. The cub stirred as the forest shifted. Her head lifted slightly, chin brushing grass, eyes opening wider now, catching movement at the boundary between light and shade. A soft sound left her throat, brief and thin, more breath than voice. Her body did not attempt to rise. Energy remained precious, spent only on recognition. One forepaw flexed weakly, claws extending just enough to touch the earth. The humans did not move. They remained where they were, outlines low, hands empty and visible. Training held them still, but so did something quieter, an understanding shaped by moments like this that could not be hurried or guided. Space was the only thing they could offer now. Space and time. The tigress closed the remaining distance until she stood just beyond the cub, close enough for scent to carry clearly between them. Her nose lowered, drawing in the air around the cub's face and body, reading what water and hands had changed, and what remained unchanged beneath it. Her whiskers brushed the cub's flank, testing, confirming. The cub responded by shifting closer, pressing her small body into the grass, breathing quickening for a moment before settling again. A voice broke the stillness briefly, no louder than the rain slipping from leaves. "Easy," it said, not directed outward but downward, grounding the movement of hands that lifted once more. The cub was raised gently, supported fully, her body yielding again, eyes fixed now on the tigress, unblinking. The distance between them narrowed to nothing. The air felt taut, stretched thin by attention. The cub was lowered onto wild earth with care that mirrored the forest's own restraint. Grass folded beneath her weight, damp but firm. Hands released slowly, retreating without sudden absence. The cub lay on her side for a breath, then rolled slightly, orienting herself toward the tigress. Her breathing steadied, chest rising and falling in a rhythm that matched the quiet around her. The tigress stepped forward immediately, placing her body between the cub and everything else. She lowered her head, touching her nose to the cub's neck, then her flank, tracing the shape that was hers. The cub answered with movement, pressing closer, legs tucking in, tail flicking once before resting. No sound passed between them. None was needed. The forest resumed itself gradually. Birds called again from deeper branches. Wind moved through leaves, releasing water in soft drops. The tigress lifted her head briefly, eyes scanning the clearing one last time, then turned, guiding the cub with a nudge of her shoulder. Together they moved back toward shadow, stripes dissolving into pattern and bark, until only flattened grass and quiet remained. At the clearing's edge, light shifted as clouds thinned, a pale glow settling over wet earth. The grass lifted slowly, rainwater sinking back into soil. Somewhere beyond sight, movement continued, steady and unbroken, as the forest breathed again and the day eased forward, leaving only the sound of wind passing gently through leaves. The cub remained still for a moment after the tigress turned, as if the act of standing required permission from more than muscle alone. Then her forelegs pushed forward, paws slipping slightly in wet grass before finding hold. She rose unsteadily, back legs lagging a breath behind, body swaying once before balance returned. The movement was clumsy, unfinished, but it carried direction. Her head stayed low, eyes fixed on the space where her mother's tail moved through the grass ahead of her. The tigress did not look back. Her pace remained measured, slow enough to be followed, firm enough to be trusted. She passed into taller growth where water no longer pooled, where the earth held its shape and the grass stood upright, brushing against her flanks without bending. The cub followed in short, uneven steps, pausing once to gather herself, then continuing, guided by scent and proximity rather than sight alone. Each step carried her farther from the river's reach. As they moved, the cub's gait strengthened. Her legs aligned more cleanly beneath her, tremor easing with each forward motion. She stayed close, nearly touching, her shoulder brushing against her mother's hind leg when the grass thickened. The tigress adjusted without pause, widening her path by inches, creating space without breaking stride. Together they entered the tall grass fully, bodies dissolving into shifting lines and shadow until only the movement of stems marked their passage. At the clearing's edge, the river continued its course. Water slid past reeds and stones, carrying branches stripped of bark, leaves pressed flat and spinning slowly in the current. Light reflected off its surface in broken patterns, bright where clouds thinned, dull where shadow lingered. Nothing in its movement suggested what had passed moments before. The river did not hold memory. It only moved forward. The humans remained where they were, still shaped low against the land. No one spoke. There was no signal to mark completion. They watched the grass until it settled back into place, until even the faint disturbance of passage was gone. The space where the cub had stood moments earlier now held only damp earth and bent blades, already lifting again as water drained away. Time stretched without demand. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving behind a quiet that felt earned rather than empty. Somewhere upstream, water broke against a fallen trunk with a steady rhythm. In the distance, birds resumed their calls, tentative at first, then more assured, filling gaps left by earlier silence. The forest reclaimed its sound gradually, without ceremony. Eventually, one figure shifted weight, straightening slowly, joints stiff from holding still. Another followed, movements careful, as if sudden motion might undo what had been allowed to settle. They turned away from the grass, from the place where wild earth had briefly held something fragile and then released it. Their steps back toward the riverbank were unhurried, boots finding familiar ground, leaving shallow impressions that filled with water almost immediately. Behind them, the tall grass stood undisturbed. Somewhere beyond it, movement continued, unseen and untracked, guided by instinct older than flood or boundary. The cub walked now where water could not reach, her steps sheltered by height and density, her body close to warmth that did not need to be named. The river carried on, unchanged, reflecting the pale sky as clouds thinned and light spread wider across its surface. Debris drifted past, then cleared, leaving only ripples and moving brightness. Wind passed through the grass in slow waves, bending it gently, erasing edges, softening every mark. The day moved forward, and with it, the forest, holding within it a moment that would not return but would not be lost.